see you remain suspicious of me, Detective.
You know what they say about old dogs?
Not really.
Somehow, I told you so just doesn't quite say it. Get off my car!
All right, so I just want to take a second to talk about is Sora and generative AI going to take my job?
It will replace us all. Looks and sounds like science fiction, George.
Well, so did everything once upon a time.
Ain't that the truth?
We talk about this a lot. I get it from students. I get it from colleagues. It's all over LinkedIn. And I remember back a couple of years ago when Midjourney first arrived on scene and everyone's like, oh, well, it's only for concept art. And then within a few months, we saw that it was doing really amazing human faces. Now, obviously, it couldn't do hands at that point, but it was really incredible what it was getting to produce and the speed at which we went from something that was just like sci-fi concept to actual implementable still art for human faces was incredible.
We're gonna miss the good old days.
One good old days.
So there's a couple of questions that we have to ask ourselves when we talk about Sora and other generative AI techniques replacing us in the VFX industry. The first one is going to be quality over cost. Right now, generative AI can produce a pretty good product, but with some fairly big caveats in look and in controllability. And yes, it's fast, and yes, it can be cheap. But there may be great cost that comes with trying to address the inherent limitations of generative AI currently.
Imagine the loss of all that we've gained because of an irrational paranoia.
That's always getting better. But the next point is the ability to, the notability of generative AI. And what I mean by that is in our field of visual effects, especially for cinema and television, there's a high level of creative feedback, of notes to perfect and craft, and that could be a whole nother video to talk about the frustrations of being noted to death. But there's a reality that when we work on projects, we will spend great deal of time fixing very small details to overall improve the visual experience. So there is a level of difficulty right now with generative AI and being able to address those notes. So, you know, I call it the Yahtzee effect. You have to put the dice back in the cup, shake and give it another throw, and cross your fingers and hope you get the results you want. That too is also improving. But that also is something currently that is going to reduce the impact of AI. Lastly, is it going to take a bunch of jobs? I think that there will be jobs in the future that get eliminated by AI tools that come on. We've seen this in the past in the visual effects industry, that new technologies and new techniques do change what the jobs are. I started out doing dust busting, right? Painting out dust hits from the scans of our celluloid film. Obviously, we're not shooting celluloid and scanning that in anymore, so dust busting jobs, they're gone. So there will be some changes that happen. The critical thing is to be adaptable, to learn as much of the technology as you can, to understand it, see how it can implement into your workflow and increase your productivity and your ability to address notes in a timely fashion and get better quality results. That's the key. It's always that increase in productivity. On the very last end of this, the biggest problem that I see currently, until there's some change in the law, the Supreme Court in the US has ruled that you can't copyright anything that's come out of generative AI.
Records are made to be broken.
Rules too, if I remember your philosophy.
That is a huge issue when creating IP, right? Intellectual properties. That if you can't copyright things that come out of that, then you can't protect your work. And for big studios, that's a huge problem, right? That's not just the individual artist that worries about this. Big companies do not want their Marvel, their Disney, their whatever content, you know, Star Wars, you know, whatever the franchise or the big thing is, they want to be able to own all of that. And so putting that through AI is a real problem legally currently. That doesn't mean laws can't be changed, but right now that is a big hurdle to AI. You know, certain elements of that might not be, depending on the project, might not be as big of a deal, right? So if you use it to generate explosions and other things, you know, things that aren't your characters or other things, I think that might be okay. What the other question is, what jobs are going to be most impacted by generative AI? I think in the beginning, it's going to be comp, concept, matte painting, and a lot of effects. I think as we were able to see, Sora is able to make things that are moving. If they can generate effects elements that are usable, I think that'll be, effects will be hot on the heels of comp and concept and storyboards and matte painting. As these generative AI technologies are rapidly increasing, I think asset building, you know, model building is going to be impacted. Obviously, I think you'll start to use those tools to make your asset, and then you will, as the artist, you'll be then fine-tuning that on top. That's my hope anyway. So I look at all of this, and things are definitely changing. So if you're looking at how do I stay ahead of things, you know, for a long time, as a teacher of Houdini, as a user of Houdini and Unreal, I would always tell my students, and I would tell young artists that learning top-end softwares that are coming of age, like Houdini, like Unreal, were really critical, and those were on top of the pile a couple of years ago. Those have now started to fall as far as I work in Houdini. As much as I love doing it, it feels old and dated in comparison to the AI workflows that are coming out now. And again, those are still rudimentary and rough. I'm not saying that's replacing it yet, but I think that day is coming. It's always about being flexible. It's about learning new technologies, embracing new technologies, being ethical, right? And I think that's another big discussion point around this. So, so if you're a young artist, or you're an artist that feels threatened or upset by AI, I encourage you to dig in and learn. Knowledge is power, and being able to see, you know, what of those things that you can leverage will give you great strength, and you know, expanding your skill sets. You may also find that you don't love the AI workflow. I know that I am less interested in that creative process as I am in the labor, the joy I get in the labor of creating through a little bit more of a wrestle with the art. But commercially, that doesn't make sense. So I understand why productions want faster and cheaper. So I hope this helps. Explore, always be a student, and you'll have success. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Okay, a simple wrong would have done just fine, but